Random House Audio presents The Majesty of the Law. This is the author, Sandra Day O'Connor. Reflections of a Supreme Court Justice. When my husband John and I packed up and moved from Arizona to Washington, D.C. in 1981, we looked forward to the many new experiences, both professional and personal, we were sure to have. Enjoying new and wonderful friends, meeting with presidents, vice presidents, cabinet members, ambassadors, and other justices and judges from around the world, travel to each of the 50 states, and sometimes other countries, for speeches or meetings. And most important, I looked forward to the privilege of applying myself to work worth doing, addressing the toughest legal issues in our nation, helping shape the development and explanation of the principles of federal law required to resolve these issues. I felt molded in large part by my life in the Southwest, where I had spent my earliest days on a cattle ranch in a dry and isolated part of the Arizona desert. My favorite author, Wallace Stegner, put it best when he said, "There is something about living in big empty space, where people are few and distant, under a great sky that is alternately serene and furious, exposed to sun from 4 in the morning till 9 at night, and to a wind that never seems to rest. There's something about exposure to that big country that not only tells an individual how small he is, but steadily tells him who he is." This audiobook is an attempt to speak about my exposure, not only to the Arizona desert and sun, but to the rest of our country as well. Exposure to the richness of its history, to the Supreme Court, and to some of its members, and to some of the legal issues I have confronted along the way. When the Supreme Court sat on the bench again the first Monday of October 2001, it had its full complement of 9 members, 1 appointed by President Ford, Justice John Paul Stevens, 4 by President Reagan, Chief Justice Rehnquist, myself, Justices Antonin Scalia and Anthony Kennedy, 2 by President Bush, Justices David Souter and Clarence Thomas, and 2 by President Clinton, Justices Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Stephen Breyer. The process of nominating a new justice tends to receive a good deal of attention. In more than 200 years, the court has only had 108 justices, which comes to about 1 appointment every 2 years. An appointment to the court is, therefore, in terms of frequency, about half as special as a nomination to the presidency, and involves infinitely less public participation and releasing of balloons. Nonetheless, a court appointment, which requires both nomination by the President and confirmation by the Senate, is an occasion for public interest, as we have been reminded graphically in the past 20 years. The person making the nomination, the President, doubtless pays special attention to these appointments. From the President's point of view, I suppose it's a little like trying to rear children. The President only gets to control the process for a brief period in choosing a particular nominee, and then the justice, like an 18-year-old, is free to ignore the President's views. And justices are usually walking around in their judicial chambers long after the President who appointed them has departed the Oval Office. Parenting and nominating justices have both been common activities among presidents. All of our presidents except 7 had children, and all except 3, Presidents Harrison, Taylor, and Carter, nominated at least 1 Supreme Court justice. Like fathers in an earlier day, the President makes the proposal and escorts the new justice down the aisle in the marriage between the justice and the court, which, barring impeachment, lasts until death does them part. As I suspect has been the case with most justices, my nomination to the court was a great surprise to the nation, but an even greater surprise to me. My former colleague, Justice Lewis Powell, once said that being appointed to the court was a little like being struck by lightning, in both the suddenness and the improbability of the event. I certainly never expected to be on the court. Rather, I looked forward to continuing my career as a state court judge, having served happily as a trial judge, and then with equal contentment on the Arizona Court of Appeals, for whose members I had deep affection and great professional respect. I had anticipated that I would live the balance of my life in our adobe home in the desert, where John and I had many friends and a pleasant way of life, and where we expected our sons to settle. My situation changed dramatically on June 25, 1981, when then Attorney General William French Smith called my home and said he wanted to talk to me about the Potter Stewart vacancy on the Supreme Court. The metaphorical lightning bolt suddenly seemed as if it might head in my direction, and I was about as astonished, though slightly less frightened, as if I had seen a real bolt of lightning making its way straight for me. The Attorney General asked me to come to Washington to visit with him, with some of President Reagan's staff and close advisers, and with the President himself. I did so, and on July 6th, 12 days after Attorney General Smith first telephoned me, the President called to ask if he could announce his intention to nominate me to the court. I said I would be honored if he did. From my point of view, the nomination was traditional in at least some ways. Like many nominees, I went to Capitol Hill to pay my respects to the appropriate legislators. And as I imagine is the case for all nominees, I lay in bed the night before the confirmation hearings, worrying about how I would be treated and how well I would be able to respond to the questions. After sitting in the witness chair on national television, answering endless questions about the Constitution, various cases, and my personal feelings on some of life's great issues, I began to think that the hearings would never end. Fortunately, however, Nancy Thurmond was giving a tea for me at 4 o'clock on the third day of the hearings. Mr. Thurmond, otherwise known as Senator Strom Thurmond, was the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, and so, fortunately, he made sure that I got to his wife's tea on time. I was sworn in on Friday, September 25, 1981. At the President's request, John and I rode with him and Mrs. Reagan from the White House to the Supreme Court. While I waited to take the oath of my new office, I was seated in the chair that John Marshall had once used. After my voice echoed the Chief Justice's administration of the oath, I was seated at the end of the bench in our beautiful courtroom, and I looked down at my parents, my husband, and our 3 children. I will never forget that moment. The appointment of a woman to the Supreme Court of the United States opened many doors to young women all across the country. The following letter that I received shortly after I was nominated sums up how a great many women in this country reacted to President Reagan's decision. I cannot begin to describe with what delight I viewed the surprising headlines in Chicago's newspapers the day of your nomination. I actually stood there with my mouth hanging open and an idiotic grin on my face, feeling overwhelmingly euphoric and proud. What it affirms to this 27-year-old female is that determination, judiciousness, skill, and professionalism are valued and rewarded in our society, that females certainly do possess these qualities, that people will find it increasingly difficult to deny and discourage these in females, and that there is absolutely no excuse not to get everything I want in life. While almost all of the mail was extremely upbeat, there were a few exceptions. I received a postcard addressed as follows: Woman, Judge-elect O'Connor, care of the White House, Washington, D.C. Back to your kitchen and home, female. This is a job for a man, and only he can make the rough decisions. Take care of your grandchildren and husband. Signed, Senior Citizen. Hundreds of men have spoken to me throughout every part of this country, in airports and all sorts of public places, saying things like, I think it's absolutely wonderful that there's a woman on the court. It's about time. I'm happy for you, I'm happy for women, but most of all I'm happy for the country. Thank goodness for men. I'm indebted to 2 of them for my appointment, the President and Potter Stewart, about whom the following little poem was written. A toast to Potter Stewart, his chivalry can't be beat, the first Supreme Court Justice to give a lady his seat. I am still amazed that I am that lady. One result of becoming a Supreme Court Justice is the steady and frequent arrival in the mail of invitations to attend and speak at
Sample complete. Ready to continue?